Man, let me tell y'all something. I thought I'd seen it all, heard it all, read it all. But then somebody told me, Steve, you know Jesus is a major part of Islam too, right? And I looked at him like, hold on now, what you mean Jesus is in Islam? What you talking about? 'Cause like a lot of folks, I grew up hearing the story a certain way. Church on Sundays, gospel music, preacher up there talking about Jesus, walking on water, Jesus feeding the multitudes, Jesus healing the blind. So when I heard Muslims talk about Jesus, man, I wasn't expecting much. I figured maybe they say something nice about him, maybe mention him here and there, but that's it. But no, man, let me tell you something. I had no idea how deep it went. I had no idea that Muslims got so much love and respect for Jesus that they even talk about him returning at the end of times. And listen, they ain't whispering about it. They ain't saying maybe, possibly, we don't know. Nah, they straight up say he coming back for real. And I sat there like, hold on. Y'all got this too. Y'all talking about the same Jesus? The one from Mary? The one who performed miracles? And they said, yes, Steve, that one. And man, I had to sit down for this one 'cause I wasn't ready. And what really got me was this right here. The amount of respect, the way Islam honors Jesus, talks about him, lifts him up. It ain't no small mention. It ain't no footnote. He's one of the greatest to ever walk the earth, one of the mightiest messengers of God. And I kept thinking, how come nobody told me this sooner? Because we out here in the world thinking, Muslims don't know Jesus. Muslims don't talk about Jesus. Muslims don't mess with Jesus. And the whole time they talking about him more than a lot of folks I know. They call him Isa. And man, the way they describe him, born from Mary, miracle from God, pure, chosen, blessed. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, this story sound real familiar. And it hit me. We've been taught for years that these religions so different, so far apart, and here's this huge, beautiful overlap that nobody talks about. But let me tell you what got me really leaning forward. This part right here, the Muslims believe Jesus is actually alive right now. Not gone, not buried, not disappeared. Alive, taken up by God, protected, preserved, waiting. And one day he's coming back. And man, I lean back like, boy, if this ain't something, 'cause everybody talk about the end of times. Every religion got some story about it, some picture how it's all going to end. But what shocked me was Islam's detail. They talk about Jesus coming back not as some new prophet, not with some new book, not to start something brand new, but to finish what he started and fix what got messed up. And I said, man, this is deep. Because look, anybody who grew up like I did, you hear about Jesus returning your whole life. Every movie, every sermon, every conversation about the future, Jesus coming back. But I never knew Muslims believe the same thing. Not kind of, not sort of, but full-on believe he's returning. And I thought, now this right here, that's a conversation people need to have. And I'm telling you, the way they describe that moment, the signs leading up to it, man, it is something else. I was listening like I'm sitting in class, taking notes because Islam don't talk about the return of Jesus like it's a mystery. They talk about it like a scheduled event, a real moment in the future. They say he gonna come back at a specific time in a specific way with a specific mission. It ain't random. And the mission, oh man, that's where it starts. Getting really interesting, 'cause he ain't coming back to run for office or do a world tour or drop a new sermon series. Nah, man, they say he's coming back to set things straight, to clear all the confusion, to break the lies, to unite the believers, to bring peace in a world that's going to be full of chaos. And when I heard that, I said to myself, man, if there's one thing this world needs is somebody coming back to set things straight. And then they started talking about the signs. Oh boy, the signs. And look, I ain't gonna act like I understood every single one the first time because some of it had me sitting there like, now wait a minute. What in the world is that supposed to mean? But then as they explained it, I said, oh, okay. That makes sense. Because think about the world today. Chaos everywhere. People losing faith, everything upside down. Wrong looking right, right looking wrong. And Islam says, yeah, that's when he coming. And I couldn't help but laugh a little bit because man, if confusion is a sign, we halfway there. But what really touched me, and I mean touched me deep, is that they say when Jesus comes back, he ain't just coming for Muslims. He ain't coming for a group. He ain't coming for a team. He coming back for the truth, for justice, for humanity. And I said, now that right there, that's beautiful. That's powerful. Because in a world full of division, full of labels, full of people putting themselves in boxes, here comes a story saying the return of Jesus is for everybody. that he's going to clear the confusion for everybody, that he's going to show the truth to everybody. And that kind of message, man, we need that more than ever. So when I first heard all this, I wasn't shocked in a noisy way. I wasn't sitting there hauling or falling out my chair. No, it was a quiet shock, a deep shock. Like, man, how come nobody ever told me this? How come nobody talks about this connection, this bridge between people? Because if folks knew how much Islam talks about Jesus, how much they honor him, how much they believe in him, man, half the arguments we got in this world would disappear. Half the hate, half the misunderstandings, half the nonsense gone. Poof, just like that. And the more I listen, the more I realize this ain't just a detail. This ain't just some side note in the religion. This is major. This is central. This is powerful. And that's when I said, all right, I gotta talk about this. Man, listen. After I wrapped my head around the fact that Islam talks about Jesus returning, I said to myself, all right, Steve, you clearly been missing some chapters. So I sat down, and I sat down like a grown man who knows he's about to learn something. And I started digging deeper. And y'all know me, when I'm curious for real. I want to know everything. Not the summary, not the trailer, the whole movie. And the more I dug into this, the more I kept saying, man, this story is wild. Not wild like crazy, but wild like perfectly connected, perfectly detailed, perfectly designed. And what had me leaning in was the way Islam explains the role of Jesus in the end times. Because they ain't just saying he returns. They saying he returns with purpose, a mission, a job to finish. And it ain't a small job. This man coming back to face one of the biggest forces of evil mentioned in any religion. And I said, oh, now that's something. Jesus coming back for the final showdown. Man, you couldn't write a movie better than this. So, I kept reading and they start telling me about this character called the Tao. Now, listen, if you ain't never heard that name before, let me break it down in Steve Harvey language. This dude is like the ultimate deceiver, the final con artist, the biggest fraud to ever walk the earth. I'm talking about the guy who shows up when the world is already upside down and he flips it even more. A man who convinces people he's got the answers, but all he got is chaos. And I sat there thinking, man, we got people today who think they slick. But this dude, he's something else entirely. And Muslims believe Jesus is the one, the only one who's going to confront him. And I ain't gonna lie to you. The idea of Jesus running it back one more time, coming down in the middle of chaos, walking into a world full of confusion and saying, all right, enough of this mess. Man, that hit me. That touched me somewhere deep because I said to myself, if there's anybody qualified to clean up a world going crazy, it's Jesus. And the way they describe his return, it ain't quiet. It ain't hidden. It ain't secretive. It's clear. It's seen. It's known. They say he descends at a specific place, a specific moment with angels surrounding him. And people recognize him immediately. And one thing that made me smile, like really smile, is how Islam describes Jesus physically. They talk about him like he's real, like you could see him walking down the street. They describe his hair, his face, his bill. And I said to myself, man, that kind of detail, that's not casual. That means something. Because if somebody tell you who they expect to return and they tell you what he looks like from head to toe, that ain't fantasy. That's belief. That's preparation. That's certainty. And I realized right then that Muslims ain't sitting around wondering if Jesus gonna come back. They believe he will. And that kind of faith, that kind of confidence, man, that's strong. Then I started learning about what happens after Jesus arrives. And this part really moved me because Islam says Jesus doesn't come back to start a new religion. He comes back to restore the truth, to clear all the confusion that people created after him, to correct the lies, the myths, the exaggerations, the misinterpretations, and what really touched me, the humility. They say when Jesus returns, he ain't coming back asking people to worship him. He ain't coming back bragging or claiming the throne. He comes back as a servant of God, a follower of the truth, a humble man with a mighty mission. And man, I don't know about y'all, but that kind of humility is rare in this world. You see people today with a little bit of fame, a little bit of money, and they act like they own the whole world. But here's Jesus, the man with miracles, the man with power. And Islam says he returns humble, gentle, just, fair. Man, that hit me. It made me respect this story even more. And then there's a part that really made me sit all the way up. Islam teaches that Jesus will unite believers, not divide them, unite them. That he'll bring people together who were separated by differences, confusion, culture, misunderstanding. And I thought, man, if that ain't what the world needs right now, I don't know what is. 'Cause look around, everybody divided, everybody arguing, Everybody think they right. Everybody else wrong. And Islam says when Jesus comes back, he's going to put all of that to rest. All the arguing, all the confusion, all the lines drawn between people gone. And I said, man, what a powerful idea that the one who returns is the one who unites. And here's what caught me off guard in the best way. Muslims believe Jesus is going to rule with absolute justice. No favoritism, no corruption, no hidden agendas, no politics, just pure fairness. They say he'll break the cross, meaning he's going to clear up all the misunderstandings about what happened after he left. He'll kill the Dajjal, meaning he'll end the greatest deception ever. And he'll establish peace. Real peace, not temporary peace. Not political peace, but true peace. And I was sitting there thinking, man, if that ain't the ending this world needs, I don't know what is. 'Cause everywhere you look today, people tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the chaos, tired of the injustice, tired of the confusion. And here's this belief saying, don't worry, peace is coming, justice is coming, the truth is coming. Islam says he returns because he wasn't finished. He returns because God raised him, protected him, preserved him for a purpose. And when that purpose is fulfilled, he lives out the rest of his life like a regular human being. Gets married, has a family, grows old, dies a natural death. And I sat there stunned, 'cause think about that. A man who performed miracles, a man who changed the world, a man who returns at the end of times to confront the greatest evil ends. His life quietly, peacefully, just like the rest of us. And man, that humbled me. That touched me because it shows that no matter how great you are, no matter how extraordinary your mission is, you still return to simplicity. You still return to humility. And that right there, that's beauty, that's wisdom, that's divine. And I remember thinking, man, if more people knew this side of Islam, this deep respect, this deep connection, this deep love for Jesus, the world would be a different place. 'Cause let me tell you something. There's something powerful about realizing we're not as far apart as we think. There's something powerful about learning that 2 billion Muslims believe in the return of the same Jesus we grew up hearing about every Sunday. And it made me think, man, maybe the world ain't as divided as we've been told. Maybe there's more connection, more overlap, more unity than we ever imagined. Man, now let me tell y'all something. By the time I got to this part of the story, I was sitting there like a man watching the season finale of a show he didn't even know he loved. 'Cause everything I kept reading, learning, hearing about the return of Jesus in Islam just kept getting deeper and deeper. And I ain't talking about deep like, you gotta squint your eyes and pretend you understand. No. I mean deep like you feel it in your chest. Deep like you got to sit back and just let it wash over you. Deep like you start rethinking everything you thought you already knew. And that's what happened to me, man. I was sitting there quiet thinking this story right here. This ain't just religious information. This is a blueprint. This is a whole message about hope, justice, unity, and clarity. And the world needs that right now. They say before Jesus returns, faith going to get tested. Real tested. Not the kind of test where you miss a prayer or skip church one Sunday. I'm talking about real tests where people don't even know what truth is anymore. Where people chase illusions. Where folks start believing in anybody who talks loud enough. And I said, well, I've seen some folks like that already. And that's when it hit me. The return of Jesus in Islam ain't just a dramatic future event. It's a message about what happens when the world loses its compass. When people start drifting. When truth gets blurry and Jesus comes back to fix that. To straighten it out. Right then, I understood why they say he's the only one who can. And then I started learning about this moment. This powerful moment when Jesus finally meets the believers, Muslim, Christian, people who still hold on to the truth in their hearts. And man, the way they describe his presence, let me tell you, it hits you different. They say he'll come down with such calm, such beauty, such peace around him that just being near him will make people feel clarity. Like all the confusion just melts away. And I thought, man, that kind of presence is rare. Most people walk into a room and bring drama, stress, noise. But Jesus, he walk in and brings clarity. You can't fake that. You can't imitate that. That's divine. But the part that really broke me in the most beautiful way is when they say, Jesus eventually passes away, a natural death. And I sat there like, wow. Because think about this for a second. He was born miraculously. He performed miracles. He was raised up to heaven. He comes back to finish the job. And after all that, he dies like the rest of us. That is one of the most humbling, grounding, beautiful parts of this entire belief because it shows that every soul returns to God, no matter how great you are, how powerful, how chosen you live. You guide, you serve, and then you return. And I kept thinking, Man, if people only knew this side of Islam, if they only knew how Jesus is honored, loved, central, essential, maybe the world would stop fighting so much. Maybe people would talk more. Maybe people would actually listen to each other. Because I'm telling you right now, this story connects billions of people. Billions, and we didn't even know it. Man, after everything I learned, after going through this whole journey of understanding how Islam describes the return of Jesus, I walked away with one thing sitting heavy on my heart. Hope. Real hope, not that cheap kind they sell you in motivational posters. I'm talking about the kind of hope that reminds you God never leaves this world to fall apart. The kind that tells you justice is coming, truth is coming, clarity is coming. Even if right now the world looks like it's wobbling off its own axis. And what hit me most is how Islam paints Jesus as a unifier, a healer, a restorer, somebody who comes back not to divide us more, but to straighten the whole world out. And I said to myself, man, if that ain't the most powerful message for humanity right now, I don't know what is. Because at the end of the day, all these religions, all these arguments, all these differences, they fade when you realize everybody's been waiting for the same man. And the fact that billions of people across this planet believe Jesus is returning, that tells you something deep. Humanity was never meant to end in darkness. So when I think about his return, the justice, the peace, the truth, finally standing tall, I can't help but feel a sense of comfort like God already wrote the ending. And it's a good one, a just one, a fair one. And that's the part that stays with you. This whole world, it's loud, messy, confusing, but the story ain't over. And when Jesus comes back in the way Islam describes, it's the moment everything finally makes sense. That's the hope. That's the message.